A drenching Canada Day weekend in southern Saskatchewan, southern Manitoba with ferocious winds as well. That's, of course, our top story here at the Weather Network. And first, a very quick look at social media and some of the stunning photos that people are tweeting out. This was tweeted by Chris D. This is in Winnipeg. Obviously, a massive tree brought down by the really strong winds, crushing a car, also on top of hydro lines, by the way. Many people were talking about people in thousands left without power in western Manitoba, I should say, because of those really strong winds. And we've had so many calls to our storm line saying they have not seen, heard, felt such winds in a really long time. It was actually very frightening for people through the overnight and the early morning. More brought down trees and, of course, the flooding wreaking havoc in farmers' fields, wreaking havoc in the campgrounds as well. I'm sure a lot of people are planning on doing some camping or were planning on camping this weekend in these southern portions of the prairies, and of course neighborhoods affected as well. And finally, you know, we've been seeing photos of people's basements too, flooded out, 3 feet of rain, 3 feet of water in the bottom. It's just not a good situation, Rachel. Now, of course, we're taking a look at some of these rainfall totals. This is why we have so much flooding.
Yes, absolutely, Kasia. And unfortunately, with this system, it's very slow moving. It's a wraparound system and more rain is to come. Now, this is what we have already seen. So
avoid the flooded out roads, by the way. That's pretty dangerous. Kasia Bodurka with you here with a look at current radar returns. And by the way, it hasn't really moved much in the past few hours. We have been seeing drenching rains through these areas for, you know, close to 24 hours, possibly beyond that even. And then on top of that, we've got very, very strong winds. Areas that you can see the yellow, that's where we're seeing the heavier rain. So anyway, Regina still seeing those showers through to Brandon, all the way through to Winnipeg, and it just continues. We still do have a rainfall warning in effect. This was issued by Environment Canada. I believe yesterday I was here, and this was just issued in some parts of Saskatchewan. It has been extended to include southwestern regions of Manitoba, where obviously we're getting those drenching rains, and it continues. How much rain have we received already? Well, over 100. In fact, some places have seen 200 millimeters of rain. This was reported on our storm line by a gentleman in Gainesville. He said 8 inches of rain have fallen, and he has it in his rain gauge there. All right, I take you now to the Ontario story, where we've got some scary looking clouds there. This shot was taken just northwest of London. You could see a scary looking shelf cloud, always associated with a severe thunderstorm. So very strong winds come ahead of that shelf cloud. Of course, very heavy downpours that happen really, really quickly. But then beyond that, behind that, it clears up rather quickly. So there you have it. If you're in Ontario, it's a quick mover. Not necessarily the case for you, though, if you're in northwestern Ontario, where we do have a severe thunderstorm watch in place. We're seeing the thunderstorms firing up right now. They have been for some time already. The oranges, the reds on the map indicating the stronger weather, the heavier downpours, and there's likely, you know, lightning and thunder associated with that. That's dangerous as well. Here's a more pronounced trough of instability, and that's what we're seeing in southern Ontario right now. It being the Canada Day long weekend. So much active weather happening right now. Not necessarily a good situation. Could become isolated severe for some places. People in southern Saskatchewan and southern Manitoba are being drenched. They're pounded by heavy rains, very strong winds as well. States of emergency declared, and that is our top story. But first, I want to talk to you about Ontario, because some pretty severe thunder showers are firing up right now. We're watching a line of thunderstorms move through southwestern Ontario. In the last hit, if you were with us, I showed you a pretty scary looking photo. We'll be showing you that as well throughout the show, so stay tuned for that. You can also check out theweathernetwork.com. But where you're seeing the yellows and the reds, that's you know, your heavy downpours and the potential for some lightning and thunder. Same thing goes for us in the GTA as well. We're seeing pop-up thunder showers here. The risk remains there through the evening as well. Anyone marked in yellow, and that's pretty much the entire province, has the risk of thunder showers, and they could become isolated severe. So when you're hearing the lightning, or when you're hearing the thunder, I should say, you go indoors, you stay away, and you have to wait half an hour after the last rumble of thunder, and then you know it's safe to go back outside. We do have severe thunderstorm watches in place for northwestern Ontario, and to the north, we've got a heat warning as well. Places that typically don't see humidex values in the 40s are getting that today. All right, we also do have a heat warning in place for Metro Montreal. Now, here's a look at current radar returns for northwestern Ontario. You can see those pop-up thunder showers there. It's becoming a little bit more organized for us, and it's beginning to head towards North Bay. And now to Winnipeg, where we're seeing damage associated with those really strong winds. So we had, in some places, 100K winds, and that coupled with all that saturation, all that rain on the ground has certainly weakened the roots, and that's why we're seeing massive trees like that coming down. It's just something else. So this is what people are dealing with in southern Manitoba, southern Saskatchewan as well. More of a flooding story there. And here's why. We've already received a good amount of rain, over, 150 millimeters of rain. Redverse, 175. Yeah. And it's just this front that just doesn't seem to want to go anywhere. So that remains in place. So does your rainfall warning for eastern portions of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And here's how much rain we are expecting still to come. Got your farmlands ruined. You've got campsites as well. And of course, your neighborhoods. I saw shots of a gentleman on a canoe, and I just got a tweet from a guy from Dan in Regina who says water is rushing in as quickly as he can pump it out into his basement. So people have, of course, damage to their homes, all because of this. Rainfall amounts as of Friday morning, or since Friday morning, I should say, over 175 millimeters in some places. I got also a call to our storm line, a gentleman from Gainesville. He says 200 millimeters of rain he recorded in his backyard. We do have a rainfall warning still in effect for eastern portions of Saskatchewan, western Manitoba. You can see why it's a relatively stationary front, this troweling behind a system. And that system, by the way, is affecting so much of the country. It's already in Ontario, northwestern regions of Ontario, under a severe thunderstorm watch right now. Okay, so we are seeing flooded out areas as of 4 p.m. Sunday. All of these places have declared a state of emergency. So it's primarily along the Saskatchewan border, but there is a place in the Interlakes region, Graham-Dale, that also has declared the state of emergency because of all this rain and the inability to keep up with it. And still additional rains to come. Heaviest amounts, though, a little bit further to the north, where we're expecting 30 to 40 millimeters of rain. And this could make a big difference, too. By the way, it's also been very windy. Winds sustained 40 to 60 kilometers per hour, where you're seeing the deeper red. So you can see southern Manitoba also more very strong winds on top of what we've been seeing already, downing trees and power lines. So many people without power right now. Right now, it looks great outside of our Oakville studios, but on radar, we are seeing that quite an intense line of thunder showers is on its way. Yeah, this is southwestern Ontario, Grand Bend. You already had your turn. It's right now over London. So this radar, the loop is over 45 minutes. So, of course, the last frame is where this thunderstorm is at, where you're seeing the yellow and the reds. That means it's pretty intense there. Please stay with us. We'll talk about the Ontario story and how this impacts you as well. There are a lot of people dealing with flooded out basements right now, flooded out roads, they can't get around. People without power in southern portions of Manitoba because of the really strong winds through the overnight and earlier today, and it continues to be gusty. Kasia Bodurka with you here. We are in flood watch because, as you can see, we've had a lot of rain and it continues to come down. When's it going to let up, right? That's the big question. Tomorrow, still more rain to come, unfortunately. And then finally, come Canada Day, it should be better. But you could see some places picking up way over 100 millimeters of rain. In fact, 175 millimeters were picked up in Redverse. Okay, so here's a look at current radar returns. You can see it hasn't moved much for some time, really. And where you're seeing the yellows, that's the stronger, the heavier downpours there. So people certainly dealing with flooding. Just got a tweet from the Regina area, people dealing with it in their basements as well. Shots of people out on their roads and their neighborhoods, and people literally taking out kayaks and canoes to get around. Isn't that something? And if you check out the weathernetwork.com, by the way, we have compiled some of the most dramatic photos for you to check out as well. It's just, scary stuff. Okay, so here we have our rainfall warning that continues to be in effect. Yeah, this has been in effect for some time, especially in Saskatchewan, and then it extends further into western portions of Manitoba, including Brandon, Portage la Prairie, Morden. You're just on the cusp there where you're still seeing the rain nonetheless. Now, how much over the next 24 hours by early morning Tuesday will still have picked up generally 20 to 30 millimeters of rain, heavier amounts to the north for you in Manitoba. All right, I want to take you now to the Ontario story. This is Windsor earlier today. Extreme southwestern Ontario. By the way, this is associated with the same low pressure system. Can you believe it? So in the prairies, that's your trowel, the wraparound behind the system, and it's so moisture laden, and there's so many winds associated with this. Here in Ontario, it's a number of troughs of instability ahead of the actual cold front that's coming through. And the big show, the big action is set to come for Tuesday, by the way, Canada Day in southern Ontario. But right now, here's another trough that's developing quite nicely. It's organizing itself. Yellows and reds, again, that's your heavier downpours. So earlier, Windsor was a target, and that's just pushed a little bit further to the east. London now in that, but yes, it's expected to move into the GTA, where we're already seeing those pop-up thunder showers. In fact, here's a look at your lightning strikes, just recent lightning strikes in the past hour or so, or a couple hours, as you can see. Yeah, lightning is very dangerous, by the way. When lightning roars or when thunder roars, go indoors, they say. We always say that. We always stress this because, you know, people die from lightning every year. Canadians, 10 of them, in fact, around that. Isolated severe thunder showers a possibility in southern Ontario, and we've got more about this coming up. Active weather happening in southern Ontario. We've got floods occurring in the southern prairies, people declaring states of emergencies, full communities rather, declaring states of emergencies along the Sask and Man border, and we'll get to that story in just one moment. Right now, though, if you do live in Listowel, as well as the Stratford area, down through to the Woodstock area, we are seeing some pretty intense thunderstorms along this line of thunderstorms, the yellows and the reds, indicative of the heavy downpours, the very strong winds. And we wouldn't be surprised if you're seeing some hail in those areas that I mentioned right now. But it's a really quick mover. So 20 minutes from now, you should be fine in those areas. But now you can tell, you know where they're moving, right? They're heading further east. So places like the GTA, you too will be affected by that front. This is all part and parcel with the same system, by the way, that is flooding out the southern portions of Saskatchewan, Manitoba. It could become isolated severe when it comes to the thunderstorm activity in southern Ontario today, as well tomorrow and the next day. We do have a lot of active weather on tap. It is hot. We've got humidex values well over the 30s, so it's super hot and soupy. That coupled with all that instability and the convection, not good for us. So we wouldn't rule out again the chance of some hail and the lightning strikes, the heavy downpours and the strong winds. The same thing goes for you in northwestern Ontario, where we do have a severe thunderstorm watch in place issued by Environment Canada. To the north, by the way, it continues to be very hot. This heat warning has been put in place yesterday. We've got humidex values around Hudson's Bay close to 40, where we typically don't see that kind of weather. And in Metro Montreal, it's super hot there as well with a heat warning in place. Meanwhile, northern Ontario, hot and soupy as well. You can see, and also activity, pop-up thunder showers there as well. Okay, now I take you to video of Sault Ste. Marie. I've been declared, especially along the Sask-Man border, where they've been the recipient of the heaviest amounts of rain. And it continues to rain, unfortunately. Kasia Bodurka with you here. We'll get to the radar returns from Saskatchewan and Manitoba in a moment. But first, take a look at the country on your Canada Day. For the most part, everybody looks fine. Even you in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, at least right around the time for fireworks, except Mother Nature may make her own fireworks in southern Ontario into Quebec. We're expecting some showers also in the Avalon, but all in all, in the Atlantic, you should be fine and unscathed by this system. Here's your low pressure system. This is the one that's bringing drenching rains to the prairies. By your Tuesday afternoon, we're expecting actually active weather all day. That's the cold front. That coupled with the really soupy conditions could spark up some pretty severe thunderstorms showers for us in southern Ontario and southern Quebec as well. But you'll notice that the system takes a beeline for the Labrador area. So many of us in the east may remain unscathed, which is good news. Now, I was talking about the heat and humidity fueling up those thunderstorms as the cold front moves through. Look how hot it's going to be. Numbers marked in yellow, that's how it's actually going to be feeling like. So it'll feel like 36. And I mean, it's hot right now. It's just getting hotter. And then in places like the nation's capital, it'll be feeling like 40 then by your Tuesday. Toronto, 7-day forecast looks like this. Yeah, thunder showers expected for today, for tomorrow, and also Tuesday, with, of course, the majority of the action happening on Tuesday on Canada Day. In several communities along the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border, including Yorkton and Sask, and now Brandon is under a state of emergency as well. I'm Kasia Bodurka. Thanks for joining us on this Sunday afternoon. It's really unfortunate for these areas. Current radar shows that this system, or it's a trowel behind a system, it's really not going anywhere. We've also got very gusty conditions associated with this as well. But where you're seeing the yellows, that's where it's particularly wet. It's coming down quite heavily in Regina. I'm getting tweets from that area, flooded out neighborhoods, people saying, I'm dealing with flooded out basements now. It's just a mess. It's a mess. So we do have a rainfall warning still in effect for all the areas that are seeing the rain right now. And unfortunately, it won't be letting up until your Tuesday at least. Tomorrow it will be a little bit lighter, but still that trowel will still be in place for a lot of these places. Brandon, there you are under a state of emergency as well. Additional rainfall amounts, we're still expecting 20 to 30 millimeters of rain, but where a thunderstorm sparks up, we could be seeing locally heavier amounts on top of what we've seen already. I mean, take a look at some of these rainfall amounts. Pretty impressive. Over 175 millimeters of rain. I always want to bring your attention there to Redverse and Pearson. And by the way, this is the area that's under a state of emergency. To the Ontario story now, where we've got heat warnings in the extreme north, feels like 40 up there. And because of all the heat and humidity, and of course troughs coming in from the same system in the prairies, that's sparking up thunderstorms. So we have a lot of convectivity going on. We've been seeing plenty of lightning strikes in the area as well, which is dangerous. A severe thunderstorm watch in place in northwestern Ontario, where we're seeing the thunder showers already. In fact, let me get out of the way here. And again, where you're seeing the yellows and the deeper reds, that's potentially heavy downpours. There's a potential for some small pea-sized hail and the lightning as well. It's certainly associated with that front as well that's moving through southern Ontario as well, where there is a risk of not severe and potentially severe thunder showers. More on this coming up. Yeah, you're out of it now, but when you see that, you want to take cover. But only when it's safe to do so. Take a video, right? Kasia Bodurka with you here. We'll talk about what's happening in the prairie provinces. It's a mess there. States of emergency declared, including Brandon now, because of all the flooding, and the rain continues, unfortunately. We're watching a line of thunderstorms move through southwestern Ontario right now, and we wouldn't be surprised, based on other radar that we use from behind the scenes, it's indicating that there is some small hail falling through some areas in southwestern Ontario, including Listowel. You had that in Woodstock as well. Now, for you in the GTA, we're seeing some pop-up thunder showers as well, and eventually these, thunderstorms will be moving through the area on this Sunday afternoon, evening, where it's pretty busy. So it's really unfortunate on this Canada Day weekend. Areas marked in yellow, we all have the risk of seeing some thunder showers today because of all the instability and that humidity in the air, but it could become isolated severe the closer you are to cottage country, unfortunately. So just a heads up, and we could be seeing some hail with that, some very heavy downpours, the very, very gusty winds as well, you name it. We do have a severe thunderstorm watch in place, this issued by Environment Canada, areas marked in yellow there. To the extreme north, we've got a heat warning in place. It feels like 40. It feels really hot right across the province, actually. And because of all these troughs moving through, all associated by the same low, by the way, that's sparking up those thunder showers, and they're quite pop-up in nature for southern Ontario right now. Southwestern Ontario looks like this right now on radar. We've been seeing those thunder showers happening all afternoon long, actually in the morning as well. Here is some area of instability further east in southern Ontario as well, and eventually as that cold front slices through, come Tuesday, it could become quite severe for southern Ontario. We are now in storm watch here at the Weather Network, our national headquarters, where we're seeing a massive problem in the southern prairies with flooding. States of emergency have been declared, especially closer to the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border, where they've been the recipient of the heaviest rains. Have a look at some of these rainfall totals that we've accumulated over the past 48 hours. Pearson, 124, 175 millimeters of rain in Redverse. I had a tweet from a gentleman in Gainesville. He said he had eight inches of rain through the overnight and yesterday. So the story continues to unfold. We do have a rainfall warning still in effect. And I mean, this one in Saskatchewan, this had been issued yesterday when I was here on my other shift. And it just continues because this front, it doesn't seem to want to go anywhere. It's relatively stationary. We continue to see the rains from that. I'll show you the current radar in a second. But the rainfall warning has extended further into western Manitoba. It does include Brandon, where there is a state of emergency now declared as well. Areas marked in green on this map are those that are under a state of emergency here. So you can see, again, it's situated in that area that had the most amount of rain. Okay, we do have video out of the Saskatchewan area. You can see Melville. This one particular neighborhood is under a state of emergency as well. Thank you to Patricia for uploading that to theweathernetwork.com, and we encourage you, only if it's safe to do so, to do the same, because it's really something else to see the photos and the videos. And by the way, we do, our top story, of course, here at the Weather Network is this, and if you check out theweathernetwork.com, we made it easy for you. A lot of the tweets with the most dramatic photos are posted there. Rainfall amounts that we're still expecting until your Tuesday morning, where it starts to taper off. You know, heavier amounts to the north, 30 to 40 millimeters of rain. And then in the areas most affected so far, still 10 to 20 millimeters of rain. But have a look, Yorkton under a state of emergency as well. Also heavy amounts of rain, and that's indicated in the red. So it's just not a good situation. It's going to be windy still. I know we have had extremely ferocious winds in some places already. We had so many calls to the storm line from Brandon, Manitoba. So the winds continue, and they've been taking down the trees and the power lines. Thousands of people are knocked off the grid in western portions of Manitoba. At least they were earlier this morning. And you can see damaged photos of localized flooding, flooded out streets. And because of that, of course, roads have been closed. Many roads, many major arteries as well, and highways. So what we're showing you here are the winds associated with that trowel. And where you're seeing, again, the deeper reds, those are sustained winds between 40 and 60 km. Not good when the ground is so saturated. You're more susceptible to more damage, to trees coming down on power lines, on cars, like in some photos that we've seen already. Speaking of photos and video, let's go to Windsor, Ontario. Some scary looking storm clouds here. This is associated, believe it or not, with the same system that's bringing us all those drenching rains in the prairies. So it's passed now in extreme southwestern Ontario, but it's still in southwestern Ontario. So London, you're pretty much done with it. But this storm system, again, it's a trough ahead of the cold front, is bringing us, you know, thunderstorms, this line right here, heavy downpours. And what some of our radars are saying that, you know, 25 to 30 millimeters of rain are coming down in a very short period of time, within an hour, as this, you know, continues to further push east. So the GTA, we're expecting these rains as well. And I know we have seen some pop-up thunder showers already through this area. Not good for a Canada Day weekend, that's for sure. People have so many plans, and, you know, we've had the Pride Parade going on today, so many outdoor events. Not a good situation. Could become isolated severe closer to cottage country, unfortunately. Heat, humidity certainly fueling those thunder showers. Monday, it looks much the same, I'm afraid. It's going to continue to get hot. We even do have a heat alert or a heat warning in Metro Montreal as well. It feels super, super hot. Come Tuesday, this is what we're expecting. Much more intense weather as the cold front comes through. But of course, we continue to cover the floods in the prairies. That's coming up next, full communities. And for that reason, there have been many communities declaring a state of emergency. Kasia Bodurka with you here. We'll be joined shortly by Nadine Powell. We'll be showing pictures and video from social media. It's just astounding what's happening in these areas. And you can see why. Have a look at all the rain that we've gotten already. And the problem is that it continues to fall right now. I'm getting tweets from viewers. They're saying, you know, I can't keep up with the flooding. The water's coming into my basement, my sump pump. I'm just trying to keep up with it. it's creating quite a mess. Some places close to 200 millimeters of rain. Here's what the radar looks right now. It hasn't changed in hours. I can tell you this. We've been watching this radar. It's intensifying for some areas, though. Brandon, south of Brandon, you can see the yellows there. That's your heavier downpours all the way through to Elbow, Saskatoon, seeing those rains, and Regina. It's been hours upon hours of rains in Winnipeg as well. States of emergency are declared right around the areas that are under this rainfall warning. So hopefully, help from outside of the community will be able to come in and help with the cleanup, because, it's just a mess. Like I mentioned, flooding everywhere. Many streets are closed, highways, major arteries as well. Yorkton, Kipling, down through to Brandon, you're under this rainfall warning, and it just continues to come down. Now, here's how much rain that our meteorologists are suspecting will still fall in the next 24 hours. So through Tuesday morning, 30 to 40 millimeters of rain to the north of Manitoba, and then heavy rain still expected down from Hudson Bay to Yorkton, where we are under a state of emergency. Unfortunately, still to come, 30 to 40 millimeters of rain. The Ontario story now. We're seeing some thunderstorms here. Isolated severe in some places, some scary looking clouds taken by Tony from the Windsor region. Extreme southwestern Ontario. You're pretty much done with it, though there always is a risk in behind this instability of seeing another pop-up thunder shower because it is so hot and humid. Here's the line of thunderstorms that we've been watching all afternoon, and the yellows and the reds indicative of heavier rain and a possibility of some small hail as well. Almost dangerous conditions, right? When you're seeing the scary looking clouds like you just saw in the video, take cover, because there's always the risk of, lightning, and lightning, of course, kills around 10 Canadians each year. It's dangerous stuff. Pop-up thunder showers in southern Ontario as well. And you can see the lightning strikes from the past few hours. Okay, that's intense. We've been seeing a lot of lightning, so really taking cover. Now, areas marked in yellow. Whoop. Okay. I don't know if we can rewind that there. Basically, it was all of southern Ontario marked in yellow. And those are the people that are under a risk of non-severe and possibly severe thunder showers, with a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for south or northwestern Ontario. We've got video of Sault Ste. Marie earlier today as that line of thunderstorms came through this area. It was heavy rain there, but we did have the lightning strikes, the thunder as well, the Canadian flag. Oh yeah, it's the long weekend, or the Canada Day weekend. It's hot and soupy to the north, and that hot air is further fueling up these thunder showers. This is all current radar as well. I'm going to move off the screen here for you to take a look. Thunder Bay getting into those thunder showers as well. Fort Frances, where we do have that warning in effect. Chapleau up to Kapuskasing. Not good. Now, we do have some humidity right now as well, and we'll continue to cover this story coming up.
For your quick, with close to 200 millimeters of rain, Cash, over the last couple of days, and it continues today and into this evening as well.
Yeah, what an awful situation for these people in southern Sask. And man, I mean, it's the Canada Day weekend. You don't want this kind of weather, these kind of events to occur ever. But on top of it, it's this holiday weekend. People are camping. They're not happy campers after all. This was tweeted by Joel Allen from the Dauphin area, where they've been pummeled, particularly. This is the same campsite, I'm assuming, because it's also Joel who tweeted this out. This was tweeted out by Cody Thal in Saskatchewan, actually, and he's just showing the rural areas, the farmlands that have been impacted. But it's also been neighborhoods in southern Manitoba and Saskatchewan as well. This guy on a canoe. Isn't that something? So we continue to bring you tweets, photos, and videos, but we also make it very easy for you, because we've compiled, some of the most dramatic photos for you, and we put them on theweathernetwork.com if you want to check them out for yourself. Nadine? Active weather in southern Ontario and floods happening in southern prairie provinces. Kasia Bodurka with you here. We'll be joined by Nadine Powell in just a few seconds. But first, I want to show you what's happening on social media. It's exploding because, it's startling to see how much rain has been falling over the past 24 or even more hours. A rainfall still in effect, a rainfall warning, I should say, still in effect as rain continues to pound on these areas. I just got a tweet from Dave. He's in Winnipeg. He says, this has been one of the most prolonged windstorms that he's ever seen in the Peg. And because of all that wind, because of all the saturation in the ground, trees are just coming down, bringing down power lines. So many people without power. And you can see this dramatic photo. I mean, it's something else. A massive tree crushing this car because of all those winds. And here's another shot like this. And this is at a local bus stop in Winnipeg from earlier this morning. But of course, it's also about the flooding. Flooded out campsites. You can see here, not a happy camper. This one was retweeted several times, really, because it's just so astounding. I mean, it being Canada Day weekend, Nadine, this is the last thing people want for such a holiday weekend, or anything for that matter, Nadine.
Yes, across the region, and there is still more to come. This has been affecting many people across the area adversely as well, and some near misses and close calls as well.
Social media as well, and we're bringing you the most up-to-date photos. And as they keep coming into the newsroom, you know, us in the newsroom, we're sitting around going, whoa, did you see this one? Did you see that one? So we've been retweeting a lot too. So if you don't follow us on Twitter, you might want to if you want to see some of these photos. This one has been just recently tweeted by Chris D. He follows these storms. He is in Winnipeg. He says this was a video grab from St. Vital this evening. Obviously, the hydro crews are busy. Obviously, a branch came down on this line, igniting a little spark. And sometimes people that witness these kind of storms, you know, they talk about seeing these mini explosions everywhere, and that's why, clearly, a lot of people without power. This is out of Regina. It was tweeted by Corinne Arend. Isn't that something? I mean, this car is pretty much completely submerged. It must be a low-lying area. Obviously, flooded out streets. Several streets are closed, and highways, major arteries as well. And we actually have an article about where these streets are in case you were traveling to this area. You want to find out a little bit more information about that. People having to canoe to get around in their neighborhoods. This is out of Manitoba. That came to us at theweathernetwork.com. And the more personal ramifications as well. I mean, everybody's personally affected by this, of course. We do have states of emergency declared in a lot of these communities, including Brandon now. But these people, you know, this is in Saskatchewan here, about 3 feet deep water in their basement. That tweeted out by Andrew Shepard. An unfortunate situation. You know, Nadine, this is the last thing anybody wants on a holiday weekend.
Yeah, well, Kasia in Saskatchewan, and we've had reports of flooding and downed power lines in some spots.
That's right. And of course, states of emergency declared through a lot of these places, especially closer to the Saskman border because of all this flooding. This is one of the pictures that has been retweeted several. It's gone viral, really, because of course people are camping, and obviously these are not happy campers. This was tweeted out by Joel Allen. This is from Dauphin, by the way, the same campground in Dauphin, not under a state of emergency, but just on the other side of Lake Winnipeg. We've got Grahamdale, which is under a state of emergency because of all this flooding. Some astounding photos also associated with the damaged down trees. Whoops, we just have a little technical thing here, but you know what? I'm going to take this opportunity to show, more pictures to come.
Once again, of course, we are seeing those showers approaching our studios here in Oakville.
Anytime now, we're going to be getting wet outside. In the meantime, yeah, a lot of people seeing those stormy conditions in southern Ontario as well. Earlier, the target was Windsor, then it pushed on through to southwestern Ontario, the London area, where this picture was tweeted out. This is a shelf cloud you can see, and there's very windy conditions ahead of that. Scary looking skies, right? But the good news is that, you know, once the heavy downpours move through the area, I mean, it drops a good 25 to 30 millimeters of rain in a very short period of time, but then it clears out. So now it looks like we're next in line. I'm going to take you now to some photos, though, that you had mentioned. You had referenced some of them, Nadine, earlier about the lit up skies, the hydro lines coming down, the sparks as a result of that. Many people without power, and this is taken in Manitoba by one of our freelance shooters who covers these storms. Typically, he says, yeah, there's hydro crews there are certainly going to be busy today. This is an astounding shot that just appeared on Twitter too, and I bet it's going to go viral very soon. This car completely, submerged underwater. This is from the Regina area. It was initially tweeted by Z99 Regina. Corinne Aaron tweeted that as well. So people getting around on their canoes and kayaks, and of course, people are dealing with, flooding in their basements as well. Nadine, quickly tell us where the storm is now and how much more rain we can expect.
Well, sure. I guess we're kept very busy this long weekend for many people because, of course, Canada Day is coming up soon, and this weather is basically spoiling our plans.
It is, absolutely. And to add to that, we are starting to see those thunderstorms move into cottage country of Ontario as well. We have astounding pictures of flooding in southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba. I'll show those in a moment as well. But first, I want to show you what our chief meteorologist, Chris Scott, had just tweeted out literally 2 minutes ago. He says boaters on the west end of Lake Ontario should get to a marina quick with a stout squall approaching. #ONStorm. If you want to see more Ontario storm pictures, by the way, you can check out that #ONStorm. But here you can see a distinct line and the yellows and the reds indicative of the heavier downpours, the possibility of hail. But again, it's more about the winds and the downpours with these storms. Another photo that was just very recently shot or uploaded to the weathernetwork.com. This is by S. Sills. I believe he's a meteorologist with Environment Canada. Have a look at this. Twitter lower resolution vision of a panoramic view of a shelf cloud. This is bowing out. ONStorm. Look at this. Can you get a closer shot of that? I don't know if we can get in tighter there. Have a look at that. That is so scary looking. This is ONStorm. This is recent stuff that we're bringing to you. And again, you could do a search on the weathernetwork.com as well, because we're bringing to you the most recent up-to-date photos that we are seeing on Twitter, I should say. I'm now going to take you to some photos. What's happening in Manitoba and Saskatchewan? A lot of people without power, localized flooding, states of emergency there as well, and details about that coming up.